Delaware, Biden's home state. PM will also participate in an in-person Quad Leaders Summit and hold bilateral meetings with other Quad leaders as well. And on day 2, he will be in New York, where he will meet and address the Indian community, meet technology CEOs. And on day 3, he will address the Summit of the Future at the United Nations headquarters in New York. In his departure statement, PM Modi said that Quad has emerged as a key group of like-minded countries to work for peace, progress and prosperity in the Indo-Pacific region, and that he will share views of 1/6 of humanity, that is all Indians, at the Summit of the Future, as their stakes in a peaceful and secure future are among the highest in the world. So for the next 1.5 hours, we will focus on the significance of PM Modi's visit to the US, possible takeaways from it, and from the Quad Summit as well. I'm Wilmington. Our comprehensive coverage of PM's visit to the US has just begun. Our correspondents will join us from the US for live updates, and analysts will put all developments into perspective. So India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi will arrive in United States in a short while from now on a 3-day visit. A meeting with his host, President Joe Biden, is the first item on PM's agenda on Saturday. Both leaders are slated to discuss issues of mutual importance as well as those related to global and regional development. Prime Minister Modi will also attend the annual Quad Summit at Wilmington in Delaware, which will provide him an opportunity to interact with his Australian and Japanese counterparts, along with President Biden, on pressing global issues and the Indo-Pacific, as well as conflicts in Ukraine, as well as the Middle East. The Prime Minister will address the Summit of the Future at the United Nations General Assembly in New York on Monday. Well, the Indian diaspora in the United States is excited to welcome Prime Minister Modi. Take a listen.
Modi, Modi, Modi,
मैं डॉक्टर अविनाश गुप्ता I'm president of Federation of Indian Association. The Indian diaspora is very much excited to receive our popular Prime Minister नरेंद्र मोदी जी. उनके आने से भारत और अमेरिका के बीच का रिश्ता और मजबूत होगा.
It's our distinct pleasure to welcome our Prime Minister, Bharat's Prime Minister here. America is our Karma Bhumi and India is our Dharma Bhumi, and to welcome the ambassador of the Dharma Bhumi to our country, to our country, America, is our distinct privilege.
I want to bridge the gap between the the youth, and all the association leaders here, and that's why we all students are here. What I feel is that there is a big generation gap between parents, grandparents, and us. But when I see Modi ji, he is very different. He understands each diaspora, each generation, and we expect him much more from him.
I'm very proud to be from the home state of Gujarat, where Prime Minister Modi ji had stayed, and it is very pride for us that we are representing the international community. And from the healthcare side, Modi ji has done so many, like he has maintained the relations, and we are proud to be here supporting Modi ji.
Third, members of the Indian community from the United States, and the Quad Summit is being hosted by US President Joe Biden in his hometown Wilmington on Saturday. Our correspondent Amritpal Singh is in Wilmington in the US state of Delaware. This is the first stop of Prime Minister Narendra Modi during his visit. Get a glimpse of the host's venue, excitement of residents, and what is in store for PM Modi's Day 1 from Ground Zero.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi arrives here in the United States on a 3-day visit. He will hold a bilateral meeting with US President Joe Biden, followed by bilateral meetings with his Japanese and Australian counterparts Fumio Kishida and Anthony Albanese. Prime Minister later will participate in the Quad Leaders Summit here. Delaware, in fact, is the home state of President Biden. It's a state where President grew up. In fact, President Biden has chosen this school called Archmere Academy, which is a private school on the suburbs of Wilmington, where President Biden studied.
This is really awesome because this is where President Biden studied, and now such a big thing is happening here. So I'm really excited for what's going to happen.
It's a big honor. It's like really a big deal to be at the same school that the President of the United States of America went to.
It gives me a lot of pride and honor that my school is chosen.
The fourth in-person Quad Summit will review the progress achieved by the grouping over the past 1 year and set the agenda for the year ahead to assist the countries in the Indo-Pacific to meet their developmental goals and aspirations. They will also be looking at areas of cooperation in areas like maritime security, high-quality infrastructure, critical and emerging technologies, cyber security, health security, natural disaster response, and climate and clean energy. The leaders will also be addressing a small event called the Cancer Moonshot event here, where they'll be speaking about what their respective governments have done in their terms to deal with the scourge of cancer. In fact, President Biden is hosting this meeting here in his school to give it a personal touch, as this will be his last meeting. In fact, both for him and for Prime Minister Fumio Kishida, as they are hanging their spurs later this year. With cameraman Kuldeep Sharma, this is Amritpal Singh for DD India in Wilmington, Delaware.
So as the United Nations holds the Summit of the Future at its headquarters in New York, one of the pillars of the summit is science, technology and innovation, where the UN will try and achieve a digital global compact to use technology for humanity equitably. Listen in to a 6-year-old Ranveer Singh Sachdeva, the youngest participant at the UNGA Summit of the Future.
As the United Nations holds the Summit of the Future here at the UN headquarters, one of the pillars of the summit is science and technology and innovation, where the UN will try and achieve a global digital compact to use technology for humanity equitably, to have youth participate in it. I have with me one kid who's not even a youth, he's just a 6-year-old child, Ranveer Sachdeva, who's traveled all the way from Delhi here in New York to participate in the Summit of the Future. He's written a book on AI. Ranveer, thank you very much for speaking to us. First of all, tell us, why are you here?
So I'm here traveling from India to, and I'm the world's youngest participant in the Summit of the Future, which is a part of the UN General Assembly. It mainly targets on how youth can impact the AI world for world peace. So I'm here to attend the Summit of the Future.
Okay. You're not even youth technically, you are just a child right now, a 6-year-old child. What grade do you study in?
I'm studying in third grade.
Okay. So how do you think as a child AI affects you or the other children of the world?
So AI affects us in many different ways.
Okay.
I've always said that our generation was born with AI because AI is all around us. We ask Alexa, right from your conversation with Alexa and Siri, to YouTube and Netflix suggesting you more songs and videos you like to watch. It's all AI.
Okay. And I understand you've written a book. What's the name of the book?
Are you born with AI?
Okay. And you say you are born with AI?
Yeah. Because, it's all around us.
Okay, great. So as Ranveer Sachdeva says, AI is all around us, but more importantly, he's here as the youngest participant here in the Summit of the Future. Well, if this is the future, then it looks bright. With cameraman Sumit Naudiyal, this is Amritpal Singh for DD India at the UN headquarters in New York.
So let's get perspective now. Guests have joined us. Prabhu Dayal, a former Indian ambassador, is with us. He was also Consul General in New York. You can say Shubhendu joining us from New York, where a lot of action is going to be there on day 2 and day 3 of the Prime Minister's visit particularly. Dr. Ashok Sharma, visiting fellow at the University of New South Wales, Canberra at Australian Defence Force Academy, is joining us from Australia. Such a pleasure to have all of you on this special broadcast. Shubhendu, I can't help but start with you because there you are seeing everything very closely. Shubhendu, you are in New York, but we know on day one a lot of action is there in Delaware, and I was looking at the distance between Delaware and United States, and in fact New York and United States, and it seems to be almost a 4-hour drive away. So tell us, how is United States of America gearing up to welcome Prime Minister Narendra Modi?
Right, Munmun, that's right. It's going to be an action-packed visit for Prime Minister Narendra Modi. So many engagements at bilateral level, at plurilateral level and multilateral level. Each of them so consequential for the future ahead. The first place that Prime Minister would be engaging with the leaders, of course, is going to be Delaware, as you rightly mentioned, in fact, President Joe Biden's hometown, Wilmington. And that's where the bilateral between India and the United States will take place, Prime Minister Modi and President Biden. And thereafter, the Quad summit is going to take place. We've seen how Quad has expanded its scope and implications beyond the traditional security infrastructure to a 360-degree holistic cooperation in the development sector. Thereafter, Prime Minister comes to New York tonight after completing his engagement in Delaware, and in New York tomorrow. It's going to be a very, very special welcome by the Indian American diaspora. Some 15,000 members are gathering at Long Island Nassau Stadium, Coliseum. Nassau Coliseum is the place that is called. Cultural programs, themes, they've all been put together to present a never before welcome, in their words, for Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Thereafter, of course, there is going to be his engagements at the United Nations. So if we look at the broad spectrum of Prime Minister's engagement, the implications are huge in this visit of the PM.
Absolutely. We'll look at those implications. Shubhendu, will request you to stay on with us. Let's get perspective now. Ambassador Dayal is right here with us. Ambassador Dayal, you've been the Consul General in the past in New York. Your children have studied in the United States, and very recently you were in the US. You were telling me that you were just back on the 17th of this month. So what are your expectations from Prime Minister's visit? He's visited the United States so many times after he became the Prime Minister, and he's got a grand reception every time he's gone there. What are your expectations this time around?
You know, you referred to the fact that Prime Minister Modi has been to the United States many times, but each visit has been high in terms of achievement, because the India-US relationship has really grown from strength to strength because of the high-level contacts which Prime Minister Modi has maintained with a series of US presidents, starting with President Obama, then President Trump, and President Biden. So there has been a series of high-level interaction, and there is a lot of content in the relationship. And I expect that the bilateral meeting, which will be held between Prime Minister Modi and President Biden, will further strengthen the bilateral relationship, and there would be some meaningful dialogue that will take place, and hopefully there will be some agreements or memorandum of understanding that would be reached. So I'm very expectant of the positive outcome of the bilateral meeting, and also the Quad Summit meeting that will be following that.
Yes, Dr. Sharma, what are your expectations from Prime Minister's visit, including, of course, from the Quad in-person summit between the leaders of India, United States, Japan, as well as Australia? You are joining us from Australia. We've seen a period when Australia was not very keen on Quad, but since 2017, it's been quite keen. So tell us about what are your expectations? Dr. Sharma, can you hear me? Okay. Shubhendu, coming to you, sticking to the Quad summit, we know that here in the wee hours of the 22nd, and for you on the 21st, there will be the Quad in-person summit. Tell us a little about What can one expect in terms of the setting, personal bonding between the various leaders, considering that this will be sort of a farewell Quad summit for both President Biden as well as Prime Minister Kishida? And also a little about the Cancer Moonshot program. Has the US version of it been very successful so far? What can we expect from it?
Right, Munmun, this edition of the Quad Summit is being seen as having great implications for as far as the road ahead for this grouping is concerned. Remember, it's going to be nearly 2 decades of the Quad grouping. Although, as you mentioned, the 2017 onwards, past 6-7 years, its relevance, its activities have increased and expanded manyfold. These 4 countries, India, Japan, Australia, and the United States, and the place that they occupy in the Indo-Pacific region, which is center of the attention. These countries, their partnership provides an alternative model of governance and partnership in the region, as opposed to countries who would like to further their own hegemony in the region, different domain. It is not just the security infrastructure that the partnership pertains to. It has expanded in a very holistic manner, keeping in mind the requirements, the particular requirements of the Indo-Pacific countries. Just for an example, infrastructure development, sustainable infrastructure development is a key priority, which is expected to be taken forward. An estimate says that the Indo-Pacific nations, all nations put together, developing, developed, and other nations put together, require about $1.7 trillion of investment every year in order to achieve sustainable infrastructure. But what they're able to manage as of today is about $800 billion per year only. And even in that, if you remove the kind of investments China makes in its own infrastructure, the number comes down to paltry $197 billion. So just to say that there is a huge gap as far as financing of infrastructure needs are concerned, it's just one example where these 4 countries are working together, putting together their best resources. Health cooperation is hugely significant. It really came into being during the pandemic emergency, vaccine production. We saw each of the 4 countries put forth their own area, in their own areas of expertise. They came together in order to help not just their own people, but people of the region as a whole. Over 450 million vaccines were distributed in the region. And as you mentioned, that this time over, the Cancer Moonshot initiative is going to showcase how these countries can work together to further cooperation, bring in the latest innovation and interventions in a problem that affects not just one country or the region, but the whole world in cancer research and treatment. So that would be a very, very important milestone for this grouping, Munmun, when the leaders meet. Of course, there are many other areas in which the engagement and momentum would be given further impetus.
Right, Shubhendu, giving us inputs on the Quad summit that will be taking place in 6 to 7 hours from now after the Prime Minister's arrival, and also the Cancer Moonshot program, which will be launched by the 4 Quad leaders on the sidelines of the Quad in-person summit. Dr. Sharma, coming to you, I was asking you earlier about what are your expectations from the Quad, but we'll come to you in a bit. Ambassador Dayal, you've seen the Quad partnership evolve in a sense. We've seen how initially they came together as an ad hoc grouping in 2004 when the tsunami hit the Indian Ocean region. Then it wasn't there for some time. Then in 2017, they came together. And since then, it has only moved from strength to strength, to use your phrase, for the India-US partnership. So what can one expect this time around? We've heard the Prime Minister say that this grouping has come of age, that this is a force for the good. What can we expect?
You know, Munmun, first of all, the main focus of the Quad is the Indo-Pacific region. So this Quad summit will, of course, discuss major global problems such as the Russia-Ukraine war, the war in the Middle East between Israel and Hamas, and now the Hezbollah. But the main focus will be on Chinese expansionism in the Indo-Pacific region. And of course, the term Indo-Pacific shows that India is central to this region. Now, we have been confronting the Chinese head-on in the Himalayan region. But the Chinese threat is now expanding all over the Indo-Pacific region. and we are also, of course, affected by it. But you know, one of the main areas which faces Chinese expansionism very directly in the Indian Ocean region is ASEAN. The ASEAN countries are facing China's bullying tactics, and the Chinese have been trying to strengthen their foothold in the entire Indo-Pacific region, and this threatens in a very direct manner the countries which are the southern littoral states of the South China Sea. Now, India has been trying to cooperate with the ASEAN countries in a variety of ways, and this cooperation also includes the very important area of defense. As you know, India and ASEAN have been carrying out military exercises, naval exercises. Then we have been more than willing to help these ASEAN countries who wanted to acquire Indian defense equipment. We have supplied BrahMos missiles to Philippines.
Yeah.
And there are some talks, I understand, which are also underway with with Indonesia, which wants to acquire these missiles too. As it is, we have given to Indonesia 40mm naval guns, and this has been greatly welcomed by the Indonesians, and they are keen to expand their defense cooperation. I may also mention that we gifted a cruise, to Vietnam to show how
It was a Corvette.
Yes.
Yes.
And Vietnam is keen to buy Tejas aircraft and some other equipment. So all these ASEAN countries see in India a country which is willing to extend defense cooperation, have naval exercises with them, and strengthen their ability to contain China, to contain the Chinese threat. Because, of course, the Quad countries are going to strengthen their presence in this region, and this is the fundamental aspect of what Quad is.
Yes.
But to be able to strengthen the infrastructure and the capabilities of the ASEAN countries, that is very important.
Okay, right. Shubhendu, coming to you now on the Quad Summit. On the sidelines, we've spoken about how the Moonshot program is going to be launched by the leadership of the four countries. But, besides that, what more can we expect going forward? Can we expect announcement of new initiatives? Because every time a Quad Summit takes place, we see a lot of addition in the agenda.
Absolutely, Munmun. As I mentioned earlier, that the spectrum of engagement of the Quad leaders is quite wide. It encompasses 360-degree development needs of the Indo-Pacific. Security, of course, is the most important one, as Ambassador was elaborating on. But there are other areas as well. One such area is a new and emerging technologies. There is AI, there is quantum and biotechnology, and their advanced applications that can be used as a force for greater good. Technologies like AI are something that the whole world is still grappling with in a manner that whether it is truly a force of greater good is something has to be determined, and there's no regulation as such. Could it be weaponized? So these themes are being taken forward in very important multilateral platforms, and Quad is definitely one of them, and also engagement in other areas are going to be significant. As far as the region of the Indo-Pacific is concerned, their own unique requirement in climate change mitigation, which is an ongoing challenge. Just in a couple of days, Prime Minister and the world leaders would also engage at the Summit of the Future, where common concerns of sustainable future and climate change are going to be deliberated. But remember, the most grave impact of climate change, the rising sea levels, is being felt by small nations of the Indo-Pacific, the Pacific Islands, and their concerns are also going to be discussed on priority. There are many development interventions that the Quad grouping has made in the region, bringing in smart technology, innovations in agriculture, funding of climate sustainable infrastructure in diverse fields. All those themes are very, very current and dynamic. And it is expected that these broad themes, which are also called Leaders Working Group, are going to be taken forward in a big way. So as and when the outcome of the Quad comes, it is expected that there would be important steps taken in a diverse area.
Right, so we expect an outcome document of Quad, we expect a joint fact sheet of Quad, and we'll expect a Quad sheet, a fact sheet in fact on the Moonshot initiative. And like you said, a lot of the initiatives will be reviewed, especially the implementation in the past 1 year, and the various leaders will be looking forward to what really can be done in the year ahead. Dr. Sharma, if you could hear me now, what are Australia's expectations from the Quad summit this time around?
I think one of the most important development that is going to be is the critical technology. And we have seen the Quad, the way it has, developed in the context of military exercises and everything that was there. It emerged as a, in the wake of tsunami disaster, but it started like, it picked with the military exercises, and we have seen that happening. But in the post-COVID-19 era, it has become comprehensive, and as discussed by all the speakers here, that it has gone to cover a range of issues, including from the pandemic containment to the health, to critical technology, to renewable energy, to
Right, Dr. Sharma, we'll try and fix the connection with you, but Ambassador Dayal, I'll come to you now. There are 4 countries in the Quad. There is India, there's United States, there's Japan, and there's Australia. Like I was, when talking to Shubhendu, I was talking about how this will be the farewell summit for President Biden, also for Prime Minister Fumio Kishida. So from the perspective of these countries, you'd referred to Chinese belligerence in the South China Sea particularly, and Japan has seen a lot of it around the Senkaku Islands. So from the perspective of Japan and Australia, how do you see the Quad summit?
Well, Quad was something that the Australians were trying to sort of not get too closely involved with, because they were afraid that they would annoy the Chinese. But they realized that Chinese expansionism is a threat to them also. And the Chinese have, of course, sent out very strong messages to the Australians by imposing very high tariffs on imports from Australia, or stopping the exports of some important items to Australia. But nonetheless, I think the Australians have come to realize that they have to play a role in safeguarding the security of the Indo-Pacific region, because sooner or later they are going to be very adversely affected also. So I think now they are they're an enthusiastic partner. They have been taking part in the naval exercises to which we invited them. All the Quad members were there. Of course, they were not really part of the Quad, but nonetheless, the presence of all the Quad members highlighted the importance which each of these Quad countries was attaching to naval exercises, because in the context of maintaining supply chains, or maritime awareness, or being able to assist the countries which are the littoral states of the Indo-Pacific region. In terms of all this, cooperation between Quad countries becomes very important, and each member has to contribute whatever it can, either by way of assisting through developmental assistance the littoral states of the Indo-Pacific region, or by being present. We have to have naval presence here to be able to send across a message to China that, look, we are not going to let you bully everybody around. We have naval presence in the Arabian Sea, the Bay of Bengal region, and also in the wider Indian Ocean. The Australians have to play a role in that regard too. Yes, and they are realizing that. So I expect Australia to become more and more involved with the all-round agenda of Quad, and I think the summit will probably be able to focus more on what all these countries can do in terms of all the items which they've spelled out as part of their summit agenda.
Right. Shubhendu continues to be with us. Shubhendu, I was looking at a statement that the White House had given on the Quad saying that China will certainly be high on the agenda of the Quad summit. Mr. Kirby, who is the White House spokesperson, said that it would be irresponsible if the Quad leaders do not hold talks about the challenges that exist in the region caused by China. So we are seeing no mincing of words in a sense by the White House. And initially we saw a lot of focus around the Quad. When we see the joint statement, we also see about the need to have an open Indo-Pacific, freedom of navigation, freedom of overflight. So do you think that this definitely would be part of the discussions?
That's a very important point that you mentioned, Munmun. I think the Quad leaders have time and again reiterated that Quad is not a grouping against any nation. It is a pro-development grouping, especially for the region of the Indo-Pacific. And that is the vision, and it presents an alternative model in the manner in which development can be brought to countries in need of the region instead of pushing reforms like debt traps. It in fact looks at sustainable financing. Instead of cyber attacks, it looks at cyber empowerment, the manner in which resources and institutions can be protected. So Quad in that sense provide a very important alternative to the kind of hegemony that the region faces as we speak. And as you mentioned, China, that challenge continues to be. But Quad leadership and the Quad grouping has been very forward-looking in the engagement without making it a grouping against any country. It has been focusing on the developmental needs. That includes the security. If you secured, you can work towards development. These needs of the Indo-Pacific region, specifically tailor-making solutions for the countries as per their needs. We were talking about some of the key priorities, and we mentioned emerging technologies earlier. Semiconductors, development and supply chain, Munmun, is going to be in great focus. We've already seen that since the pandemic, the manner in which the push for revamping the semiconductor supply chain should be done, the manner in which India is now all set to play a greater role in this ecosystem, that would be high on agenda. The application of semiconductor technology, cyber security is another issue where the leadership would be working together very closely. An estimate says in 2020, some $1 trillion worth of losses were incurred in this region of the Indo-Pacific, mostly in fact by the four Quad members. The attacks were directed at these Quad members. So those challenges are also on the card when these leaders meet, Munmun. But more importantly, that they don't present the Quad grouping as anti-China or anti-any country, but focusing on their development needs and immune themselves from the hegemonic powers around.
Right, Shubhendu, we'll come back to you. I would request you to stay on with us. Let's take a look at how addressing summit of the future at the United Nations in the presence of leaders from member countries is one of the major agendas of India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi during this visit. India's permanent representative to the UN, P. Harish, explains the importance of this summit and India's role in helping nations of Global South meet the challenges of the future.
The focus has been, what can we do to reboot the multilateral system, to make it fit for purpose to deliver development to the world's majority. I think with this in mind, the Summit of the Future process had begun, and India actively participated along with all other nations in this process. What can we do to achieve sustainable development goals, have an SDG stimulus so that we can try to reach our Agenda 2030 objectives? What is it we can do more to contribute to achieving our goals on climate change? What is it that we could do in the digital arena to leapfrog development and give a leg up to countries in the Global South so that they can cover the distance that they could not all these years? What more we can do to transforming global governance, to ensuring that the institutions are fit for purpose for this new era? And most importantly, it is about the youth of the world. India is able to provide all the necessities for its people when India is able to harness science and technology, digital platforms and digital public goods for 1.4 billion people, when India is able to ensure food security, energy security, and develop new paradigms of development, and be a model and make these available to our friends and partners in the global south, I think that makes a huge impact. And that is the true importance of India. And when Prime Minister comes, I think his message would be the example that he has set India on this development process.
We'll take that forward with Shubhendu in a bit, but before that, let's try and connect again with Dr. Sharma. Dr. Sharma, what are your expectations as far as Australia is concerned from the Quad Summit? We've seen Australia complain a lot about the cyber attacks that it says have allegedly emanated from China. So tell us what really do you expect as far as Australia's participation in the Quad is concerned?
Look, Australia has been the lead participant. We have seen that in military exercises, and it was in the wake of COVID-19 outbreak when China started flexing its economic muscles and putting embargo on Australian exports to China. Australia was allowed to join this, military exercise, and in 2020. And since then, it has been an important nation in the Quad, and the Quad military dimension is complete. But Australia is very much concerned about all these non-traditional security issues, which have become very, very important in the Australian context. So it's the cyber security. There have been a lot of cyber attacks in Australia, Australian government institutions, universities, and all that. And then there are also concerns about this, semiconductor. This is another area, critical technology, all that what Quad is discussing. Australia is also a part of that, and Australia is also looking to address those challenges. Australia is concerned about it. It was in a strategic denial mode. It was a nation isolated through oceans, but now it has realized that it's not going to be the same in the future. So it's Australian Defence Strategic Review. It has clearly come out with this, that no more. So there has been a lot of spending on the defence, and Australia is a very active participant in the Quad, along with the US and India and Japan.
Okay, we'll take that forward. Shubhendu, we heard the interview that you took of India's permanent representative to the United Nations, and he was talking about the summit of the future. You are in New York, you'll be covering that summit. Tell us what can India expect from the Prime Minister's statement and India's participation in UNGA this time around?
Munmun, in a recent interview and engagement, the Secretary General of the United Nations, speaking about the summit of the future, said that, well, this summit wouldn't have been required if everything was on track as far as sustainable future is concerned. But the truth is that it's not good news. Things are not on track. The climate mitigation efforts, the deadlines are not on track. Ensuring peace and security in different parts of the world, especially engaging developing countries, is not on track. The idea of reform multilateralism, where global institutions not just represent the concerns of the developing world, of the global south, but also see their equal participation, even that is not on track. So all the major ways in which one could define sustainable future, in fact, is not going in the right direction. It is, to an extent, an alarming situation. And therefore, it is important for the leadership across the world to come together and do some sort of a course correction. Now, Prime Minister Narendra Modi's address becomes hugely significant in this context, is because India is one of the few countries that has, in fact, not just managed to achieve some of its sustainable development goals, climate goals, but even exceeded what it had promised, particularly in the domain of renewable energy. Now, then India is also in a position to ask questions about what is the kind of intervention that the developed world and the rest of the world is making to ensure sustainable future. India and other developing countries are doing more than their capacity to achieve a sustainable future for everyone, but has to be a shared responsibility. We understand that the challenges related to sustainable future has the most dire consequences, if not met, for the countries of the global south, for the developing countries whose energy requirements, whose finance requirements who needs for a peaceful and secure region is perhaps even more important than many of the developed countries. They are the countries which suffer the most. So in this losing the track towards a sustainable future, the biggest victims are going to be countries of the global south and developing countries. And therefore, in this very important summit, which is seen as a course correction summit, India's position becomes hugely significant, and the perspective of the global south, that India as it's called the leader of the global south, the perspective that India presents is going to be hugely significant.
So India will share its development story. India will be willing to offer experiences as well, especially for the developing world to incorporate in their growth story. A lot of expectations there ahead of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's address to the Summit of the Future at the United Nations headquarters in New York on Monday. But there is a whole lot of expectations in terms of engagements of the Prime Minister over 3 days. Remember, first there will be a bilateral meeting that Prime Minister Narendra Modi will have with US President Joe Biden. That will be followed by an in-person Quad Leaders Summit. And then on day 2, the Prime Minister will be addressing the Indian diaspora. He'll be meeting technology CEOs. And then on day 3, the Prime Minister will be addressing the Summit of the Future at the UN headquarters, which Shubhendu was talking about. At this point in time, we'll take a breather, but we'll be back with lots more. Do stay tuned to DD India for all the latest and for comprehensive analysis on expectations from Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to the US, including from the Quad Summit. Stay tuned.
जिंदगी की हर छोटी बड़ी जरूरत के लिए आप जो सपने सजाते हैं, बस उसी उम्मीद को तो हम सहारा लगाते हैं। SIP आपकी सेविंग्स को आपकी खातिर काम पर लगाएगी। आज ही अपनी पहली SIP की शुरुआत करें। अधिक जानकारी के लिए अपने वित्तीय सलाहकार से परामर्श करें। LIC म्यूचुअल फंड द्वारा निवेशक शिक्षा की एक पहल।
म्यूचुअल फंड निवेश बाजार के जोखिम के अधीन है। योजना से संबंधित सभी दस्तावेजों को ध्यान से पढ़ें।
अच्छी चीजों में समय लगता है, खूबसूरती निखारने में वक्त लगता है। ब्यूटीफुल डिजाइन्स टेक टाइम, लेकिन KYC अपडेट मिनटों में। KYC अपडेट अब आप घर बैठे बैठे भी कर सकते हैं। रजिस्टर्ड ईमेल, रजिस्टर्ड मोबाइल नंबर, ऑनलाइन बैंकिंग से, आधार, OTP बेस्ड eKYC से या फिर वीडियो KYC से। यहाँ तक कि अकाउंट भी घर बैठे बैठे खोला जा सकता है। RBI कहता है, इन्हीं से सुनिए,
जानकार बनिए,
सतर्क रहिए।
जिंदगी की हर छोटी बड़ी जरूरत के लिए आप जो सपने सजाते हैं, बस उसी उम्मीद को तो हम सहारा लगाते हैं। SIP आपकी सेविंग्स को आपकी खातिर काम पर लगाएगी। आज ही अपनी पहली SIP की शुरुआत करें। अधिक जानकारी के लिए अपने वित्तीय सलाहकार से परामर्श करें। LIC म्यूचुअल फंड द्वारा निवेशक शिक्षा की एक पहल।
म्यूचुअल फंड निवेश बाजार के जोखिम के अधीन है। योजना से संबंधित सभी दस्तावेजों को ध्यान से पढ़ें।
Complex issues, hidden agendas, twists and turns, strategic games. We think all dots are linked. We just need to connect them. Join me every week as I connect the Welcome back. You're watching a special broadcast on Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to the United States. In a short while from now, Prime Minister will be landing there for a 3-day visit, and Prime Minister Narendra Modi will first up hold a bilateral meeting with US President Joe Biden in his hometown in Wilmington in Delaware State, and after that there will be an in-person Quad Leaders Summit. Prime Minister Narendra Modi, US President Joe Biden, Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida, and Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese will be present there. And on day 2 of Prime Minister's visit, the focus is going to shift on his meeting and interaction with the Indian diaspora. He's meeting with technology CEOs, and then that will be in New York. And then on day 3, he continues to be in New York, and there he will address the Summit of the Future at the United Nations headquarters. And we are discussing the significance of Prime Minister's visit to the United States, including his participation in the Quad Summit. This is the 6th Quad Summit, but the 4th in-person Quad Summit between the leadership of the 4 countries. So let's now take a look at how India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to the US has triggered tremendous enthusiasm among Indians who are excited about the Indian community event in New York. Our correspondent Nikhil Singh had a special conversation with some of these Indian Americans in New Jersey. Take a look.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to USA is very significant, and the most exciting part of it is the community event for which I am there in New Jersey, and people from Indian origin are with me and they are so excited and they are ready to talk about that event. So how excited you are about that event of Prime Minister Narendra Modi?
We are very excited and we are proud that we got a Prime Minister like Narendra Modi. And we all would like to say thank you to him for creating a Ram Mandir and doing so many good things for India, and for which now people know us and people ask about India, ask about our nuclear program, ask about our space program and so many things. So thank you, Modi ji.
Right. How excited are you, sir? What preparations have you made?
Yeah, this is one of the very big event for us here in the US, having our Indian Prime Minister visiting us. That's a big deal, right? And we are very proud of him because the way his thought process is, the way he made people of India felt like the borders are secured, the way he handled China issue, very proud of him.
Right. So you have an American flag in your hand. So that denotes the India-US friendship.
Yes. I am. This is a very proud moment, and this is with the Modi ji coming to US. It's like right before Diwali is like Diwali before Diwali. So we have double Diwali, and it's a proud moment for all Indian Americans. And I'm very excited to go to the event.
Okay. So you are also preparing to go to the event?
We both are going to the event, and we are very excited. Under Modi ji's leadership and administration, government has achieved a lot, and I'm hoping that this momentum will continue, and government will achieve more and more for India's development, for India and US tie relationship, and we all are very excited about it.
Right. So people are excited around us here to attend the community event. I'll talk to some more people, right?
Hi, I'm also going to visit this Modi ji's event, and I'm volunteering also because I feel that this is my own country leader who is here to support us, and we feel so proud for India, and then the way he's handling and the way he's meeting the people domestically and international is awesome. So of course I'm very proud of that, and I would like to be attend and meet Modi ji. Very excited.
He's proud of Prime Minister Modi. I have one more person who's holding an Indian flag. So we know that how excited you are.
I am very much excited. I am Manish Sharma, and I can proudly say that I am an Indian American in any part of the world because Modi ji has put India everywhere in the world where we can be recognized as Indian, and he is the most fearless, selfless leader working for India and its citizens.
Okay, so here are the positive thoughts which you can see that the people around us are giving, and they are really very enthusiastic, very excited for the event, and they are all set for the event, just waiting for Prime Minister Narendra Modi to come and just address what he wants to say to these Indian Americans. With cameraman Sanjay Jaina, this is Nikhil Singh reporting for DD India from New Jersey.
And there you heard members of the Indian community share their expectations ahead of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's arrival in the United States. Let's get a sense from you, Ambassador Dayal. You've seen that over and over again. You've met Indian Americans. Your children, you told us, have studied in America. You've been the Consul General in New York, so you have worked for the benefit and welfare of the Indian community there. Tell us the kind of contribution that the Indian American community has made to America and also to the India-America partnership.
Well, I think that the Indian American community has served as a bridge of friendship between India and the United States. You saw how people were holding Indian flags in one hand and the American flag in the other hand, So they have become very loyal Americans, very patriotic Americans, but at the same time, they retain India in their hearts. I've always said that you can take an Indian out of India, but you can't take India out of an Indian. And the Indian American community shows how it is serving to bring the two countries closer together in every possible manner. Of course, the Indian American community has been very successful. They have contributed in every manner possible to the development of America. They have played a positive role, and that of course brings some glory to India too, because India is looked upon favorably, and unlike countries which only promote negative sort of activities. So what I'm trying to say is that the role of the Indian American community has been very significant when we talk about bringing more friendship and more amity between India and the United States.
Yes, and connecting it to Quad 2, we know that there is a human element to the Quad as well. There is focus on HADR, which is humanitarian assistance and disaster relief. Besides that, the Cancer Moonshot program is going to be unveiled, which will be all about ensuring that there is greater access to cancer treatment, that cancer is prevented in the first place, or detected or treated, so that the burden that is there on cancer patients as well as on their families gets reduced as much as possible. This is of course based on a domestic version in the United States that was launched by former US President Barack Obama and has since strengthened with time. Well, Dr. Sharma, you are also an Indian American, and I'm sure you've been to New York and you have friends there. Tell us about how the Indian community is perceived there. Is their contribution recognized? Because I was looking at how significantly the Indian Americans have contributed to the US economy. There is so much investment that Indian companies have done to the US. There are so many direct jobs that have been created. There was a CII report that was recently released that put it out on paper too.
Well, I would like to say that this is a topic which I did PhD. Indian lobbying in the U.S. foreign policy has been my PhD. So I have covered it during my JNU days. So you have entered in an area where I have written thesis. So I can talk a lot, but I would only say, I will add to the ambassador's comment that, look, Indian American community has, they have, first they achieved their professional success. First, they achieved their professional success in the 90s and they started transforming into political activism. And the first time they showed their political activism was when India conducted nuclear tests, and India faced a daunting task of convincing the US legislators, which were still very under the Cold War mindset. And then Indian American community, the way they lobbied, the way they changed the perception of the US Congress through India caucus members was an extraordinary effort by the Indian American community. And since then, there has been no look back. And we have seen how the Vajpayee government engaged the Indian diaspora. And then it was another time when the US-India nuclear deal was being, passed through the US Congress. Then they also played a significant role in that. So their role is an extraordinary in the, in the changing the perception about Indian American India in the US Congress has been extraordinary. So they transformed their professional success to political activism. They immigrated in 1960s and 70s when IIT and IIMs and medical sciences students went there and they transformed. So then now it was, before Modi came to power, Prime Minister Modi came to power, it was, it went to the backstage and the Indian lobbying model were resting. So when Modi went to this Manhattan speech, the kind of rock star welcome he got by the Indian American community was, then again, Indian diaspora across the world was reactivated with that event, that September 2014 event in Manhattan. And since then, there has been no look back for engaging Indian diaspora in all over the world. But the Indian American community has been considered as a model minority in the community, and they have played all sorts of role in changing the perception about it's not just the Cold War dynamics change and the US-India started developing. It was what was needed was the perception about the India in the US Congress, and in that Indian American community have played an important role. And we have seen how there are many Indian Americans who have started, contesting for the U.S. president. We have now this Jamaican father and Indian mother. Kamala Harris is there. Before that, Bobby Pierce Jindal was there. There were Ramaswamy was there, Republican candidate who withdrew. So we can see that the political activism have increased. They are vying for the top posts in America, and they are significant part of the India-US relations. So I value that more than the strategic convergence which we have been talking about in 1990s. At the end of the Cold War, the structural realism, all that changed. But I value this more than the other factors. So their role is very significant, I would say. And so that model is being replicated in Australia, in other countries as well. Thank you.
Right. Dr. Sharma, interesting to say that you value the people-to-people relationship and partnership more in the contribution of the Indian diaspora to the development of the United States economy more than the strategic partnership between India and the US. Well, Ambassador Dayal, I was looking at a tweet that has been put out by Modi Archive, and there was a visit 30 years ago that happened in 1993. The US State Department and American Council of Young Political Leaders invited a young Indian politician to a special program starting from Washington, D.C., and that was none other than Prime Minister Narendra Modi. It's been 21 years since, and that sort of an exchange that must have happened, or an invitation that must have given to him, and he saw different parts of the United States then, is also symptomatic of the kind of people-to-people ties that have been there between the two countries, the exchanges that take place. There are educational exchanges, there are professional exchanges. What would you like to say on that?
Well, the people-to-people relationship is very important, because only when you have such a relationship does it translate into bipartisan support. America doesn't have a relationship with India, a good relationship, only when, for instance, the Republicans are there or when the Democrats are there. There is a bipartisan friendship which the Americans demonstrate towards India, and that has happened because of the people-to-people contacts which have been strengthened. And I must say that Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi has played a very significant role in promoting outreach to the Indian American community. He has reached out to average Indian Americans and shown great warmth to them, and in turn they have also been endeared, and they are determined to play a very positive role in strengthening the relationship between India and the United States. So the fact that there are so many Indian students studying there in the United States, the fact that so many Americans come to visit India and so many Indians go to visit the United States, these are examples of exchanges which occur between the two countries at the people-to-people level. And another aspect of this, of course, is the fact that in the United States, Indian Americans have done well in all areas of activity, medicine, as engineers, in technology, in trade, in the political arena, literature, culture, you name it. Indian Americans have distinguished themselves, and therefore they have been able to reach out to other sections of American society and helped in promoting and strengthening people-to-people contacts between India and the United States. India is perceived very well in the United States, in the white sections of American society, because of the fact that the Indian American community has endeared itself to other sections, and also because most Americans do realize that both the countries, India and the United States, are democracies, and they have shared values. The United States is perhaps the world's oldest democracy. India is the world's largest democracy. So there should be a friendship between them naturally. But I must say that only during the last 10-15 years have I seen that friendship strengthening, and as I said, a lot of the credit goes to Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi for the steps that he has taken to endear himself not just to the American establishment, to the American president, but also at the people-to-people level.
Right. And let's get more details on this important piece of information that we were just discussing. In 1993, the U.S. State Department and the American Council of Young Political Leaders invited a young Indian politician to a special program starting from Washington, D.C. And starting 10th July 1993, Narendra Modi, then a BJP Gujarat worker, set out on a learning expedition to the US. This visit, which took place between the 10th of July and the 23rd of July, included a series of meetings set up by the US State Department with political leaders, senior administrative officials, American policymakers and representatives from the trade industry. During his visit, Narendra Modi gained extensive exposure through discussions about American politics, foreign policy and other matters with prominent US congressmen, senators, governors and mayors. In Houston, PM Modi got the opportunity to tour the Houston Medical Center, which is one of the largest in the world, and made a special visit to the NASA facilities at Space Center Houston. During this visit, he also gained exposure to the country's political ideologies and legislative structure. He interacted with various local trade, commerce and economic development authorities. Dr. Sharma, while reading this piece of information to the viewers, I was reminded of how Prime Minister Narendra Modi today is the only Indian leader to have addressed the US Congress joint session twice, and how there are at least 5 persons of Indian origin who are now US congressmen. So tell us about how, since you've done your PhD on this subject, Indians have become so important in American polity and society.
But they are very less, just 4.5 million, and really now they have increased the I think they are 1.5% of the total population of the US. So when it comes to the population, as a voter number, they are not very good. They are not a big number, but they are influential. Yeah, Merrill Lynch, that firm, in 2007 or 8, they came out with the data that every 10th Indian American is a millionaire. So they are very rich ethnic community, and out measuring any community on 10 skills, 7 they top, highest education, all that stuff, what you were talking about in measuring any community, Indian American community comes out of 10 measurements, it's on 7 they come as top. So they obviously their professional success, and they're creams of India. Most of them creams of India went there. And then later on, there was when the Y2K problem came, and so a lot of other engineers were also not from IIT, but less ranked technical universities and technical institutions also went there. But overall, they have transformed their professional success into political activism. They form a very, very, significant component of American society. They assimilate very well. They preserve the Indian identity, but at the same time, they are contributing.
Right. So, Dr. Ashok Sharma there talking about the contribution of the Indian community to American society and polity. And here you are watching a comprehensive coverage of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to the United States. He will be landing in the United States in a short while from now. This is going to be a 3-day visit. There will be 2 stops primarily. One is Delaware, the home state of US President Joe Biden, and then New York. In Delaware, the focus is going to be on the bilateral meeting that he will have with President Biden on the in-person Quad summit. And you know that there are 4 countries that are part of the Quad. There is India, United States, Japan and Australia. And besides that, there will be bilateral meetings with the leaders of the other Quad leaders as well. And then on day 2 and day 3, the focus will shift to New York. In New York, Prime Minister will be addressing and interacting with members of the Indian diaspora. And after that, the Prime Minister will have a roundtable with technology CEOs. The idea would be to attract more and more investment in technology-related areas like artificial intelligence, semiconductors, biotechnology, quantum computing. And of course, on day 3, the focus again would shift at the UN headquarters in New York, where as part of the UNGA, United Nations General Assembly, Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be addressing the Summit of the Future. And later, a pact for the future is going to be adopted at the end of this summit. Let's now take a look at how a mega Indian diaspora event is being organized in New York to welcome Prime Minister Narendra Modi during his visit to the United States. Some 15,000 Indian Americans from across different states are reaching the Nassau County to participate in the program. The theme of the event is Modi and US Progress Together. DD India correspondent Shubhendu Ghosh brings us more.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi is visiting United States. Besides the strategic and diplomatic engagements at the Quad Summit and at United Nations, there is great anticipation around Prime Minister's connection with the Indian diaspora. In fact, I'm standing right now in front of this mega stadium, which is the Nassau Coliseum. This is going to be the venue for this very special diaspora program that Prime Minister would be engaging in. I have with me 2 members from the organizing committee of this mega program, Jagdish and Suhag. Jagdish, from you, I'd like to learn what are the arrangements made? How are you planning to make this event a memorable one?
Well, it's going to be a memorable event. Just imagine the Prime Minister Narendra Modi is going to address New York after 10 years. After Madison Square Garden, this is the first time. We have been after Narendra Modi ji to come and address us, but because of his busy schedule, he couldn't do. Thank God, finally he has agreed. And just imagine, day after tomorrow, 15,000 strong New Yorkers plus people coming from 40 states of America. 500 organizations, 500 cultural program artists coming together for this mega event at this mega stadium to welcome Prime Minister Narendra Modi in Nassau County. And this is the first time ever any Prime Minister has come to Nassau County. So I was talking to the Nassau County executive, that is Mayor of Nassau County. He said, Jagdish, I'm so excited. 2 months back, I hosted a cricket team, and now I'm hosting your Prime.
So we are getting breaking news now that Prime Minister Narendra Modi has landed at the Philadelphia International Airport. Prime Minister Narendra Modi being received there at the Philadelphia International Airport. Indian Ambassador to the United States, Vinay Mohan Kwatra, is present there. A very significant visit of the Prime Minister. It is significant in terms of the bilateral component of the visit, the plurilateral component of the visit, and the multilateral component of the visit. This is a 3-day visit. The first stop of the Prime Minister will be in Delaware, which is the home state of US President Joe Biden. This is the first time that President Biden will be hosting world leaders at his hometown in Wilmington in Delaware. And then the focus will later shift to New York, where Prime Minister will be meeting members of the Indian diaspora. There is a 4.4 million strong Indian community in the United States. Prime Minister will also be having bilateral meetings with a host of other leaders, with all Quad leaders and other leaders also, as they are all converging in New York for the UNGA high-level week. Later, there will be also Prime Minister's address at the Summit of the Future at the UN headquarters in New York. So Prime Minister Narendra Modi has arrived for what is going to be a historic visit of the Indian Prime Minister to the United States of America. This will also be an opportunity to bid farewell, in a sense, to US President Joe Biden, because his term is coming to an end. He is not going in for re-election. This is also going to be an opportunity to bid farewell to Fumio Kishida, the Prime Minister of Japan, because he has announced that he also will not be contesting in the elections of the ruling LDP there in Japan in a few days from now. So a very important summit as far as the legacy of President Biden and Prime Minister Kishida are concerned. And of course, a lot of focus is going to be on the Quad leaders in-person summit, sixth Quad summit in all and fourth in-person Quad summit. It was India's turn to host the Quad summit in 2024, but at US request, and since Prime Minister Narendra Modi was traveling to the United States, it was decided that India will be hosting this summit in 2025, and that will also be an opportunity for the next US president to come to India. And in 2024, the turn went to United States. Ambassador Dayal continues to be with us. Ambassador Dayal, you've seen these visuals in the past over and over again, but every time there is a freshness, there are high expectations from the visit. Your thoughts on this occasion?
Well, I think that the visit has several dimensions. First of all, there is the Quad summit itself. And India has given some indications to the other members how it sees the agenda shaping out for the Quad for the coming years. Secondly, of course, there are these very important bilateral meetings which Prime Minister will have with the other Quad leaders, beginning of course with President Biden, but also with the other two members who would be attending the Quad summit. Then there is the community event, which is very, very important, because as we discussed earlier, the community serves as a bridge of friendship between India and the United States. And Prime Minister Modi has been unique in the sense that he really reaches out to the community and makes them feel loved and endeared. I have served in the Foreign Service so many years. I've never seen such huge community welcomes for the Prime Minister as I have seen during the term of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. And then of course there is this important address by Prime Minister at the UN summit for the future. And the UN Secretary General has said that it is going to be once in a generation summit. And the theme is multilateral solutions for a better future. Now certainly the world needs to come together to solve global problems. And unfortunately, the United Nations has not been able to gear up and galvanize itself because of the fact that it is such a divided house. And it's very important to send across the message that it is time for the world to act as one. And I think India has been sending out this message very consistently, because the emphasis we lay is on Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, one world, one family, one future. So the future of every single human being on the planet is connected to the future of others. And I think this connectivity is the message that India has been sending across. And I think that in this summit also, in a variety of ways, we will be able to send across a message that we attach a very high degree of importance to the United Nations, because it can serve as the medium for solving global problems, which is what the theme is, and finding multilateral solutions for a better future.
Absolutely. So there you see visuals of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's arrival at the Philadelphia International Airport. The Prime Minister heads to Wilmington in Delaware, which is the home state of US President Joe Biden. It is for the first time that President Biden will be hosting foreign leaders there. This is going to be a very special bilateral meeting and also a very special in-person Quad summit, because Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be meeting all the leaders in person, and President Biden will be bowing out of office in some time from now as US holds its presidential elections on the 5th of November, the voting for which, by the way, has already begun in some states, and Japan is heading to elections as well. The LDP, the ruling party there, is going to hold an election of its next leader, who will be the Japanese Prime Minister, on Friday. So an extremely important visit of the Prime Minister, yet another opportunity to meet members of the Indian diaspora. 4.4 million strong Indian community is present there. They are a living bridge between India and the United States. They've made significant contributions to the US polity and US economy and to the relationship as a whole. And besides that, in the bilateral meeting, which will be the first engagement of the Prime Minister, and I'm talking here about the bilateral meeting that the Prime Minister will have with President Biden. The focus is expected to be on reviewing the entire gamut of the global strategic partnership between India and the United States. We know that at least 2 sets of agreements are expected to be exchanged between India and the US. One is, of course, there are 2 pillars that India has decided to join in IPEF, which is the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework. This was an arrangement that was founded by the United States, and India has decided to join the 2 pillars of fair economy as well as clean economy. And in all, India would then join 3 out of 4 pillars. India has kept out of 1 pillar so far. And besides that, there will be an MOU that will be exchanged between the 2 sides on the issue of an Indo-US drug framework to counter synthetic drugs peddling and trafficking. And look at the adulation that we are seeing once again in the United States, in Philadelphia. The Prime Minister has just arrived. There are members of the Indian diaspora holding the Indian tricolour and interacting with the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister autographing one of the paintings presented to him. The Indian diaspora extremely excited. They've all lined up just to see the Prime Minister. And these are visuals that often remind us of the kind of love and adulation that the Prime Minister receives every time he visits a foreign country. We've seen a lot of adulation in the United States every time he goes there. And this time we'll see more of it on Sunday when the Prime Minister will be there in New York, where he'll be meeting with the members of the Indian diaspora, with thought leaders, with others who have been extremely significant as far as the India-US bilateral partnership is concerned. So once again, we see members of the Indian diaspora having gathered just outside the airport to welcome Prime Minister Narendra Modi. This time in the United States of America, every time we see the Prime Minister being showered with love and adulation by the Indian community. He makes them feel like a living bridge, like the real ambassadors of India in the United States. So your thoughts on the occasion?
Well, I think the manner in which Prime Minister is reaching out to the Indian American community is itself an indication of how he has been able to energize them and enthuse them into serving as what you called the living bridge between India and the United States. The warmth from Prime Minister's side is evident, and also the warmth which the Indian American community is showing towards him is also so evident. So I think it's a very happy occasion for the Indian American community to be able to welcome Prime Minister in this manner.
Yes, in fact, there are 4.4 million Indian Americans or Indian origin people who reside in the United States. Persons of Indian origin are around 3.18 million. They constitute the 3rd largest Asian ethnic group in the United States. There are many Indian American community organizations. There are many professional organizations of Indian Americans too. Indian Americans are one of the most successful communities, and they excel in diverse fields, including politics. The Indian diaspora has been a catalyst in cementing closer ties between India and the United States. There are 5 persons of Indian origin in the US Congress. So these visuals once again showing us the kind of love that the Indian community has for the Prime Minister, and how this sentiment is reciprocal in nature, because the Prime Minister waves at them, the Prime Minister shakes hands with them, the Prime Minister takes blessings from them. Many times we've seen him embracing children. So these are really moments to cherish for a lifetime for all members of the Indian diaspora who get the opportunity to see him. And during his visits abroad, we always see a lot of Indian Americans wanting to see the Prime Minister, wanting to meet him. Many of them would be seeing the Prime Minister for the first time. They're always excited in the run-up to Prime Minister's arrival. And when they get to see him, their excitement reaches a crescendo. The Prime Minister never disappoints the Indian Americans who always gather to catch a glimpse of him. There is so much reciprocity in the gestures that we see. The Indian community welcoming the Prime Minister in the United States of America, and the Prime Minister reciprocating their sentiments and their warmth. The Prime Minister makes it a point to meet members of the Indian diaspora, to interact with them, to even announce initiatives for them, requests them to bring many tourists to India, calls them the real ambassadors of India. Ambassador, the Prime Minister also tends to make announcements during his visit, because we've seen some announcements related to educational scholarships, professional reciprocal visits. There are announcements for visas also for the host countries. And, these special gestures that the Prime Minister makes of autographing various paintings, of embracing children, of seeking blessings, of reaching out to people across age groups and different stratas of society. Right. Before we come to you, there's Shubhendu who's joining us on phone line. Shubhendu, we are seeing pictures of Prime Minister Narendra Modi being welcomed by members of the Indian community. Please take us through the kind of sentiment that you see on ground.
Oh, there's great enthusiasm on the ground, Monmon. As you can see, the visuals, Prime Minister engaging with people of every age group, youngsters, students, men, women. Many of them have come to meet him with special gifts. There are autographs that they're taking. There are pictures that they've brought. It speaks volumes about the kind of emotional bonding that Prime Minister enjoys with members of the Indian diaspora. Each time the experience, the sentiment is as if an elder from home has come home to visit the family. That's the kind of emotional connect that people across all age group, and I think that's a hugely important point, that it is not like group or adults who've come. The children, the very young children who've also come, they're as excited to see the Prime Minister as their parents and grandparents. So that kind of a rapport is quite special, and it's more emotional than anything else. It gives the people, the Indian American people, a great sense of connect when Prime Minister makes great efforts to engage with them in special programs. They've also been saying that they've waited for a long time since the Madison Square Diaspora event in the United States, nearly 10 years. And this particular visit was being anticipated by people, the Indian Americans in particular of United States. Those visuals, of course, coming from Philadelphia. But let me tell you that here in New York, the excitement is equally palpable in Nassau County, where the Indian American community has made big arrangements to welcome Prime Minister. This event will, of course, happen tomorrow, the Diaspora event called Modi and US. And there is also a play of word. They said that it's not just Modi and US, it's also Modi and us. And there is a direct connection that the Indian diaspora members find with Prime Minister Modi. Most of them feel that Prime Minister, the kind of stature that Prime Minister is accorded in on global platforms, the Indian Americans, Indian origin people relate to that. They see it as a boost to stature for them personally, for their country. So in that sense, what the Prime Minister has done for the nation on the global stage, the issues that he raises, the manner in which he raises those issues, is a reason for the diaspora to be very proud of. And Prime Minister has time and again called the Indian diaspora, the Indian American community, and elsewhere the diaspora community as the true ambassador of Indian culture and Indianness. So in that sense, there is also, in his words, in Prime Minister's word, a certain celebration, certain recognition of the potential of Indian nationals, Indian origin people who live far away from their motherland. Perhaps now many of them become citizens of America, but their Indianness, that ethos, that cultural connect, which is not bound by any official document, I think that gets reinvigorated each time they engage with Prime Minister, and he also leaves no stone unturned to reach out to each of them, you can see in the visuals, taking time out to look at the special pictures and gifts that youngsters, people have got for him, putting his signatures, sometimes posing for the selfie, trying to make sure as many hands that he can shake, he's able to do that. So this engagement is very, very dynamic, and at the heart of it is the emotional connect that the two sides have, Prime Minister and the Indian diaspora. Munmun?
Right, Shubhendu, we also have seen in the past some very special moments. I remember when the Prime Minister had gone to the White House last year in June, then the perimeter of the White House was in a sense laid open for the Indian community members. Indian community members were watching as US President Joe Biden and Prime Minister Narendra Modi were delivering their press statements. Isn't this kind of a gesture extremely close to the hearts of the Indian community there? This must be really, really valuable for the people.
Oh, absolutely. It is gestures like these that give the Indian community, the Indian Americans, a sense of belonging, that they may now have a new life on a different land, but their connection to India is still not just recognized but admired, and every effort has also been made by the Indian government to make sure that the best facilities, opportunities are also made available to Indian Americans, and not just Indian Americans, in that sense, Indians living abroad in different countries. In times of trouble, in times of celebration, Government of India, Prime Minister Narendra Modi directly has always been present. So in that sense, there's a great sense of connectedness that they say they feel, particularly since Prime Minister Narendra Modi started his engagements with the Indian diaspora. You gave that example of White House and such places put open for Indian community members. But we also have to see that the Indian community in India, in America, the Indian Americans by themselves have also achieved great milestones. I mean, there is some 5 million strong Indian American, Indian origin people who reside in the United States. And they constitute about second to third largest Asian ethnic group in the US. And not just that, they're very, very successful in the professions that they're in. They excel in diverse fields. Even politics, there's so many Indian origin faces that one can recognize who are in a position of influence today. They are one of the most educated diasporas in the United States. Their contribution to the American economy, the American influence is very significant in proportion to their population size in America. So in that sense, the Indian diaspora is very, very respected, very thriving, very prosperous in the United States. And when Prime Minister Narendra Modi comes into the picture, it sort of has a multiplier effect that not only is the contribution of the Indian Americans celebrated, but the kind of connect that Prime Minister brings in with the Indian diaspora, the celebration, even for the American administration, becomes a thing of great interest. And they are also invested in these kind of engagements. Indian Americans also occupy top leadership positions in a lot of science and technological institutions and enterprises. So in that sense, Indian Americans have made a great name for themselves. And this engagement that we see on our screens, Prime Minister Narendra Modi meeting each of them individually, just sort of brings in that sense of celebration, that sense of bonding, that sense of closeness that the Indian Americans feel towards India and, of course, its leader, Prime Minister. Manmohan?
Yes. Ambassador, would you reckon with everything that Shubhendu said about the sense of connect that Indian Americans feel when Prime Minister reaches there, and that there is an Indian in every Indian American, because they may have become citizens of the United States, but there is this Indianness which is reinvigorated in them every time they see the Prime Minister.
Yes, absolutely. And the way Prime Minister meets them, he rekindles that sense of being Indians, you know, among them, because they are so busy in their day-to-day lives, in the American way of life. But by meeting him, that sense of Indianness, the Indian identity gets rekindled. And we could see by the visuals on your screen how they all found that it was totally unbelievable for them that they were either touching the Prime Minister or shaking his hand or getting his autograph. I mean, imagine those little children who had brought their paintings in hope that they could get Prime Minister to autograph them, sign them some. What is the sort of feeling that of jubilation that they would be having? So I think the welcome which the community gives is warm, and the manner in which Prime Minister himself goes out, meets them, that itself is absolutely amazing, and that builds a bond of attachment and endearment between the community and the Prime Minister.
Yes. So, Dr. Sharma, your thoughts on this occasion? Is there a sense of deja vu? Every time the Prime Minister goes overseas, we see this warmth and bonhomie between the two sides, this sense of endearment that is there, a lot of adulation for the Prime Minister and how the Prime Minister reciprocates.
Of course, it is there. I think it's Prime Minister Modi's personal touch, the way he gives to the the way he makes every visit special by meeting them people and meeting the Indian American community. And it's a kind of, the sense of belongingness that he infused into the Indian American community or Indian diaspora wherever he goes. So the diaspora community outside India, they feel attached to India. The Indianness is revived whenever Prime Minister Modi goes there. And the kind of rock star welcome, the kind of, the adulation, the welcome, the gathering he commands anywhere in America or anywhere in the world he goes by the, the kind of he gets the Indian American community is his personal touch, the way he gives. And it has helped in India's relations with these countries. There's Indian diaspora, Indian American community, the way they then again play a role in the India-America relationship. So it's overall it's a very positive thing. And in Indian foreign policy, engaging Indian diaspora has become one of the main components and priorities, one of the main priorities of Indian foreign policy, and it is seen since the arrival of Prime Minister Modi.
Once again, these
and
visuals.
It has helped in all sorts of relationships. Not only, it's a kind of because it's also the perception. As I said, there are a lot of negative perceptions about India because of its, the Cold War dynamics, and especially in the Anglosphere countries. I've lived in New Zealand, I've lived in Australia, so I have seen that. And so the diaspora community, the assimilation in these countries and the kind of role they have played in facilitating the relationship between India and the adopted land is extraordinary. And so the Prime Minister outreach to the Indian diaspora in all these countries. Recently, he was in Singapore, he was in Brunei, and all that country, or in Europe, he went to Russia, he went to Ukraine, all over there. So they play a significant role in a positive role in bridging the gap between India and the adopted world. Indian American community, as I said, it's a model Indian American model community, and they still have to play a more political role, because if you compare it with the Latin American community and other ethnic groups in America, other than the Anglo, European settlers, you will find that the Indian American community still lacks in the political activism, though they are very successful in professional activism. Professionally, they are successful out of just by 2012, out of top 20, high-tech companies, the top 20 multinational companies of America, 12 companies were headed by Indian origin people. So you can see that, but still it has not been transformed the way it should have been transformed into the political activism. If you compare it with the other community, Indian American or African American or other Asian American community, Indian American community has yet to prove that role in terms of Indian American legislative initiative was taken. There were a couple of Indian American Forum for Political Education, all that has been there. So I'm just trying to bring out the Indian diaspora. It's not about just meeting, it's about the political activism, the kind of role they play, and the kind of, the progress they are making into the political activism in the US.
Right. We'll take a breather at this point in time, but our special broadcast on Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to the United States, where he's just landed and also met members of the Indian diaspora, will continue after a short break. Stay tuned.
जिंदगी की हर छोटी बड़ी जरूरत के लिए आप जो सपने सजाते हैं, बस उसी उम्मीद को तो हम सहारा लगाते हैं। SIP आपकी सेविंग्स को आपकी खातिर काम पर लगाएगी। आज ही अपनी पहली SIP की शुरुआत करें। अधिक जानकारी के लिए अपने वित्तीय सलाहकार से परामर्श करें। LIC म्यूचुअल फंड द्वारा निवेशक शिक्षा की एक पहल।
म्यूचुअल फंड निवेश बाजार के जोखिम के अधीन है। योजना से संबंधित सभी दस्तावेजों को ध्यान से पढ़ें।
कब तक लंबी लाइनों में उम्र बिताइएगा? डिजिटल पेमेंट अपनाइए, चुटकी में हल पाइए। पुराने तरीके कब तक अपनाइएगा? डिजिटल पेमेंट बहुत आसान है। देखिए, चुटकी में पेमेंट चुका। बटुआ ढूंढ रहे हैं? डिजिटल पेमेंट अपनाइए, कभी भी कहीं भी और सुरक्षित। हमने तो इन्हें डिजिटल पेमेंट करना सिखा दिया है। आपने? RBI कहता है कि
डिजिटल पेमेंट अपनाओ,
औरों को भी सिखाओ।
जिंदगी की हर छोटी बड़ी जरूरत के लिए आप जो सपने सजाते हैं, बस उसी उम्मीद को तो हम सहारा लगाते हैं। SIP आपकी सेविंग्स को आपकी खातिर काम पर लगाएगी। आज ही अपनी पहली SIP की शुरुआत करें। अधिक जानकारी के लिए अपने वित्तीय सलाहकार से परामर्श करें। LIC म्यूचुअल फंड द्वारा निवेशक शिक्षा की एक पहल।
म्यूचुअल फंड निवेश बाजार के जोखिम के अधीन है। योजना से संबंधित सभी दस्तावेजों को ध्यान से पढ़ें।
Complex issues, hidden agendas, twists and turns, strategic games. We think all dots are linked. We just need to connect them. Join me every week as I connect the dots to unravel hidden designs in statecraft, mysteries, and decode issues that matter to you. Watch Connecting the Dots with me at these times on DD India.
जिंदगी की हर छोटी बड़ी जरूरत के लिए आप जो सपने सजाते हैं, बस उसी उम्मीद को तो हम सहारा लगाते हैं। SIP आपकी सेविंग्स को आपकी खातिर काम पर लगाएगी। आज ही अपनी पहली SIP की शुरुआत करें। अधिक जानकारी के लिए अपने वित्तीय सलाहकार से परामर्श करें। LIC म्यूचुअल फंड द्वारा निवेशक शिक्षा की एक पहल।
म्यूचुअल फंड निवेश बाजार के जोखिम के अधीन है। योजना से संबंधित सभी दस्तावेजों को ध्यान से पढ़ें।
We need to look at waste as a resource. There are many possibilities and opportunities here, starting from the water that we use to brush our teeth in the morning and the shirt on your back.
We are always proposing a hybrid sort of operation where you're blending in technology where it's useful.
This recycling unit helps us to save 30 to 60% of the drinking water, and we were able to prove that it saved not only water but energy too.
Till now, which was considered as a waste, we are now adding value to it, which is increasing the farmers' income. At the same time, it's raw material for a different line of production as well.
I rework materials and use them to make carpets and other items. You could say we're recycling the fabrics.
we are looking at new and emerging dimensions in India's most important strategic partnership with the United States.
From Washington's standpoint, India, I would say, is a rising part of our economic portfolio looking globally. It's now one of our 10 largest trading partners. And again, if any company has got offshore R&D and IT, it's probably coming first to places like Bangalore and Hyderabad. What we've seen just in the last couple of years is a shift away from transfer of technology, of selling things to India, and of exercises, which are all great and they're fundamental, but we are now moving actively into interoperability.
Welcome back. You're watching our comprehensive coverage of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to the United States of America. He's just landed at the Philadelphia International Airport and he's got a very warm reception from the vibrant Indian community there. And now the focus will be in Delaware, the home state of US President Joe Biden, where in Wilmington he will be hosting Prime Minister Narendra Modi and other Quad leaders as well. There will be a bilateral in a short while from now between Prime Minister Modi and US President Joe Biden, and there will be an in-person Quad summit. Prime Minister Narendra Modi will also be meeting with other Quad leaders. We are building up to that. We continue to be joined by two guests in the studio. I have with me Ambassador Prabhu Dayal, who's served in the past as Indian Consul General in New York, and also Dr. Ashok Sharma, who is a scholar who's joined us from Australia. Well, your thoughts on the Indian community. You were telling us earlier about how successful this Indian community has been, and we really don't need more evidence when it comes to that. Look at who is the CEO of Google, who is the CEO of Microsoft. They're all Indians, aren't they?
Well, indeed, the Indian American community has distinguished itself in all areas of activity: medicine, engineering, as academics, in literature, culture, and as you said, there is a whole list of Indians who are CEOs of top-ranking American companies. So their success also brings glory to India, because Americans see these people as high-end achievers and think well of India. As it is, there is a natural bond between India and the United States because, as I said earlier, we are the world's biggest democracy and they are the world's oldest democracy. So these democratic values themselves endear us to them and them to us. But of course, for some time during the Cold War, America didn't feel too close to us because their policy was either you are with us or you're against us. But after the end of the Cold War, these things have sorted themselves out. And in bringing India and the United States closer together, the Indian American community has played a very, very important role.
Okay. Now, if we look at the bilateral meeting, Dr. Sharma, between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and US President Joe Biden, what we know for sure is that two sets of agreements are going to be exchanged. Two, of course, are those instruments of ratification that India will be submitting to the US State Department related to IPEF, which is the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework. India had joined just 1 out of 4 pillars earlier. Now, India has joined the second and the third pillar as well. So India, after supply chain resilience, has joined clean economy and fair economy, but is keeping itself out of a fair and resilient trade. The importance of this to your mind?
Yeah, it's very important. If you look at the Indo-Pacific Economic Forum that is launched by the Biden administration and India's Indo-Pacific vision, they align together. But when it comes to the free trade recap and all that, India has been, India does not want to be part of this because India has reservation about that, and it will be sorted later on. But clean energy, clean economy, and this all other 3 pillars are very important. When we talk about this, again, this meeting of the Quad is also in this context itself, because once you align with the Indo-Pacific vision of each other, then only you can talk about the Quad also. So there is this clean energy and technology and resilient economy, which we have been talking about this. So India and US relationship and this Indo-Pacific framework is growing, and it's not only military, but it is becoming comprehensive, and it is addressing the issues which are becoming important in the modern economy. And especially, I would like to try to focus here, which is also linked with the Quad. And in the bilateral meeting and the last next generation partnership, which was, the last meeting of Prime Minister Modi with President Biden was termed as the next generation partnership. We have been talking about the global strategic partnership, but it was the term next term came with the next generation partnership. So that will be enhanced, and that's a Indo-Pacific Economic Forum will be part of that. And this clean energy, when we are talking about resilient economy, when we are talking about sustainable development, in all that context, this semiconductor is also becoming critical technology is now going to be focused in the Quad, in the bilateral relationship. This will become an important component of this. Look, the semiconductor and all that, this is becoming, this ecosystem is very important in the modern economy. We know the electronics and products, whether it's the smartphones or, anything you talk about, this chips are important. America dominates this sector, and India has to play an important role. India has to enhance its presence in this. India is not a big anywhere in the player in this. In America, along with its European partners and Asian partners, Japan and South Korea and Taiwan, they are major players in this. So I think the bilateral relationship will touch this issue as well, which is energy efficient. When we talk about clean economy, clean energy efficiency is also linked to this entire semiconductor and the critical technology. Chris Miller is an associate professor of Tufts College, and I've been he's written a book on, New York Times bestseller, a book, Chips War, the quest for the world's most critical technology. So that's where the entire thing is going, and geopolitics is going to happen. And India has to play an important role through the bilateral partnership and the Quad, because these chips are important. They can be used for defense purpose. And nations who have been there, they have been trying to fortify. Japan tried to fortify, make it self-sufficient, but you can't do it. So all the nations have to, they have to develop their own capability. Like America can, make these tools, machines, and research and design, but the chip process is being in Taiwan. It's the biggest producer of the chip, 90% of that. And we have seen how Taiwan issue has become an important flashpoint in the Quad meeting, in the relationship between all these four countries. The South China security has become an important component of the entire Quad. So it's obviously balancing. China is there. When we are talking about clean energy, clean economy, this arena is there is a fear that China might dominate. At the moment, it is in the US and its strategic partners and allies, European and Asian, but it might be. So India has to come to play an important role. India is, as we mentioned, but why? Sorry, I'll wrap up. India has to play an important role in this, because India, with its high-tech population, English speaking, they can be an important component of this entire semiconductor clean energy, that the pillar we are talking about. It can be an important component of that.
Yes, it's interesting that you bring this up, because semiconductors are one of the sectors, in fact, that the Prime Minister will be focusing on when he meets technology CEOs in New York. So what are your expectations in terms of technology investments in India? We've seen how Micron, a US company, has set up base, in a sense, of a facility for manufacturing semiconductors in Sanand in Gujarat. And the government of India says that it is expected that it will start exporting chips from 2025 itself. So going forward, is there a lot in terms of potential collaboration in the technology sector, because this is evolving by the hour?
You're absolutely right. There is a lot that lies ahead in this very important sector, and this happened because of the ICET agreement, that is the Initiative on Critical and Emerging Technologies, which our two countries had signed, and which got a fillip during our Prime Minister's state visit to Washington in June last year. And the ICET encompasses a number of important areas, as you mentioned. And these are going to be the focus of discussions.
Yes, but this is with regard to the technology roundtable that he'll be having with the CEOs. Yes,
and also
in New York.
bilaterally.
Yeah.
Many of these areas will be the focus of the discussions. And then when Prime Minister tomorrow, that is on Sunday, meets the CEOs at a roundtable meeting in New York, then I think these will be discussed in terms of the nitty-gritty, because these are people who are involved in the actual operations relating to areas which the ICET covers. So I think this is a focus of great importance, and I think that Prime Minister is very particular in emphasizing the importance that these areas have for India's development.
Yes, and there's another MOU that is going to be exchanged between the two sides, and the Ministry of External Affairs did say that in the curtain raiser press briefing, and that will be on the India-United States drug framework. We know that there is already cooperation in terms of combating narcotics that is on between the two sides, focusing on synthetic drugs. Do you think that this will get a more formal shape with this MOU?
I think it could, yes. I think there will be some emphasis on that. And certainly the area which you mentioned, I expect that there could be a memorandum of understanding on that. And there could be also one larger framework.
Hold your thoughts. Visuals of Prime Minister Narendra Modi meeting members of the Indian diaspora at the hotel where he will be staying in the United States. Once again, visuals of very excited members of the Indian diaspora, the Indian community members, all lined up to see the Prime Minister, to shake hands with him, to speak to him, to take his autograph or his signatures on their paintings and their pieces of art. An extremely excited, vibrant and happy Indian diaspora, extremely happy to see the Prime Minister waving at them, reciprocating their gestures towards him. There's so much warmth that is there in the body language of the Indian community members, and Prime Minister Narendra Modi reciprocating. The Prime Minister giving his blessings in a sense to one of the Indian community members who happens to be a child. The Prime Minister shaking hands with members of the diaspora, all very eager to shake hands with the Prime Minister, to take his autographs, to have a word with him if possible, to take his photographs, to take his videos, to maybe try a selfie with the Prime Minister. So this is happening for the second time in a matter of 1 hour in the United States. The Indian community welcoming the Prime Minister in its own inimitable style, and these are some instances and special moments that the Indian community members are going to cherish for their lifetime. Some of them may also make it to the Indian diaspora community event. The Indian community is going to organize a community event where Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be addressing them in Long Island in New York, and that happens on Sunday. So the Indian community is always extremely excited. You can hear them as they shake hands with the Prime Minister. There are chants of Modi, Modi. The Indian community gifting flowers to the Prime Minister, welcoming him with as much warmth as possible. There are people cutting across all sections of society, welcoming the Prime Minister. Our correspondent Shubhendu Ghosh is with us. Shubhendu, an outpouring of adulation for the Prime Minister. In a matter of 1 hour, we've seen at least 2 such gatherings of Indian community members welcoming the Prime Minister with so much warmth and affection.
Absolutely, Munmun, you rightly put. Just been over an hour, and look at the kind of reception that Prime Minister has received. The love, the affection, the enthusiasm and the energy with which the Indian diaspora, the emotional outpouring, as you can see, we saw it at the airport, at the hotel in Wilmington. It's just a testimony of the connect that Prime Minister has with the Indian diaspora. And mind you, this is just the beginning. Prime Minister later tonight, U.S. time, he would be reaching New York after concluding his engagements with bilaterals and Quad in Delaware. And here in New York, the excitement is palpable for the Indian community members to welcome the Prime Minister at the hotel when he comes here. There's, of course, this mega diaspora event that is lined up at Nassau Stadium that is going to take place tomorrow. It's going to be a mega event. They promise that people have not seen that kind of energy and welcome before. But it is not just about the size, but the passion with which the Indian diaspora connects and welcomes. Really, in those visuals, for many who are unfamiliar with Indian way of things, must wonder what works for that sort of rock star-like welcome that Prime Minister Narendra Modi is presented each time he goes abroad and engages with the Indian diaspora. There are also members from other nationalities, in fact, who are part of this grouping, who are in some ways associated with India, Indian people or Indian culture. But on each of the faces, you can see the excitement of seeing Prime Minister in person. And I think that really happens when a person has created that sort of a credibility, that sort of a persona, that sort of an emotional connect with people, not just at home, but those living abroad. And Prime Minister time and again says that the Indian diaspora, the Indian Americans, the Bharatvanshis, the different ways we call them, they are the true ambassadors of Indian way of life, Indian culture abroad. I was telling you earlier that Indian Americans have made a great name for themselves through their hard work, through their talent, through their value system, the value system of democracy, which is common between India and America. So in that sense, they're a very thriving and respected community. But what is happening now is with Prime Minister's interventions and reforms, India has also achieved a particular platform, a particular stature on the global scheme of things. India is known as a country which is both peace-loving and yet powerful, which meets the world, meets all its partners on equal terms. So in that sense, that has also added to the stature of the nation and for those who represent the nation. So in that sense, Indian diaspora must also experience that change in the manner in which they're seen, they're engaged with, on a foreign land, in times of trouble. Indian government is not...
Shubhendu continues to be with us. Shubhendu, we saw Indian cultural performances to welcome the Prime Minister. Once again, the Indian community reliving Indian culture in the United States on this occasion.
Absolutely, and what an energetic performance. And we see Prime Minister also applauding, clapping and joining in. The smile, especially his Gujarati music, closer to his heart, would sort of make him experience India beyond the Indian land, on a foreign land, the manner in which Indians have been able to preserve and celebrate their culture. Must be a special moment for the Prime Minister as well. When he says that Indian diaspora, Indian Americans, Indians living abroad are true ambassadors, this is also speaks volumes about the kind of ambassador we want to be. Even as we make a new life in a foreign country, there is a certain celebration, there's a certain acceptance, there is a certain comfort in being Indians in foreign land as well, adhering, enjoying your culture, showcasing it with great pride, the colors, the dance, the music, and Prime Minister also happily joining in. And in the scheme of things during Prime Minister's visit, it's just the beginning. As I mentioned, that the scale is going to grow bigger and bigger from here. And really, the peak of it is going to be at the Nassau County Stadium, Nassau Stadium, where over 15,000 Indian Americans are gathering. They've gathered from different states, across 40 states, I'm told, of United States of America. They've all come to meet and greet Prime Minister. They see it as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to be able to meet Prime Minister in person. And Prime Minister also always making an effort to make time to engage with the Indian diaspora and making sure that this connect that the Indian diaspora has with the homeland is celebrated, and he makes it a point to compliment and be a part of it whenever he visits America or any other foreign land. We'll
leave it at that. Shubhendu Ghosh, thank you so much for joining us from the United States. And we thank the two guests also, Ambassador Dayal as well as Dr. Sharma, for joining us and sharing your views on Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to the United States, the upcoming bilateral meeting between Prime Minister Modi, US President Joe Biden, as well as the upcoming in-person summit, the Diaspora event, the engagement with technology CEOs, and the Summit of the Future as well. We'll take your leave at this point in time, but news and updates will continue on DD India. Stay tuned.
जिंदगी की हर छोटी बड़ी जरूरत के लिए आप जो सपने सजाते हैं, बस उसी उम्मीद को तो हम सहारा लगाते हैं। SIP आपकी सेविंग्स को आपकी खातिर काम पर लगाएगी। आज ही अपनी पहली SIP की शुरुआत करें। अधिक जानकारी के लिए अपने वित्तीय सलाहकार से परामर्श करें। LIC म्यूचुअल फंड द्वारा निवेशक शिक्षा की एक पहल।
म्यूचुअल फंड निवेश बाजार के जोखिम के अधीन है। योजना से संबंधित सभी दस्तावेजों को ध्यान से पढ़ें।
जिंदगी की हर छोटी बड़ी जरूरत के लिए आप जो सपने सजाते हैं, बस उसी उम्मीद को तो हम सहारा लगाते हैं। SIP आपकी सेविंग्स को आपकी खातिर काम पर लगाएगी। आज ही अपनी पहली SIP की शुरुआत करें। अधिक जानकारी के लिए अपने वित्तीय सलाहकार से परामर्श करें। LIC म्यूचुअल फंड द्वारा निवेशक शिक्षा की एक पहल।
म्यूचुअल फंड निवेश बाजार के जोखिम के अधीन है। योजना से संबंधित सभी दस्तावेजों को ध्यान से पढ़ें।
मिठाई तो हमारे जमाने में होती थी।
हाँ तो जाइए ना अपने जमाने में।
रोमांस तो हमारे जमाने में होता था।
पेमेंट भी उसी जमाने का है। अरे भैया डिजिटल पेमेंट करना सीखे नए जमाने में। इजी, सेफ एंड फास्ट है। हमने तो इनको डिजिटल पेमेंट करना सिखा दिया। आपने? ये सेल्फी लेते हैं, ये हमारे जमाने का है। RBI कहता है
डिजिटल पेमेंट अपनाओ,
औरों को भी सिखाओ।
जिंदगी की हर छोटी बड़ी जरूरत के लिए आप जो सपने सजाते हैं, बस उसी उम्मीद को तो हम सहारा लगाते हैं। SIP आपकी सेविंग्स